You co-hosted the top podcast for podcasters. Today, you've recently co-founded pod partnerships with your business partner, connecting brands and podcasts with campaigns that convert.
Me and my business partner have been in the podcast space for probably about 8 combined years. We've been running events, teaching people how to start podcasts for the longest time. So we've then gone and founded pod partnerships, which helps podcasters to earn more money through their partnerships, but also helps brands to run better campaigns. We've done 270 episodes of a podcast about podcasting.
Most podcasts don't go past the first 23 episodes.
It takes time to see those results. It's not a case of just record and upload. There's editing, there's show notes, there's titles, there's promotion, there's getting guests. That's not even including monetizing it.
What do you think most people misunderstand about how podcasts actually grow?
When it comes to podcasts, there's 3 ways to leverage podcasting. You guest, you start your own, or you advertise on other podcasts. Now, all 3 of them have different benefits, different downsides, different upsides, and are suitable for different people and companies.
Guesting or doing episodes on your own.
It's possible to succeed with a solo podcast, a co-hosted podcast, an interview podcast, any of them. I think interview podcasts generally get the most traction, and that's always going to be the case. People want to see the guest, so that's always going to do well.
No audience, no brand, just a mic. How would you launch your podcast today?
Well, that's a very good question. I think I would leverage the...
What's up, my smart friend? Before you jump straight into this episode, there are 3 boxes I'd love you to check while you watch. First things first, please make sure to hit the subscribe or the follow button down below, because the more we grow, the bigger guests we can approach on this platform and the more value we can bring to you here on the podcast. Second, a lot of friends always reach out to me and say something like, "Hey, Arrey, I really did enjoy this particular segment of this episode." What I want you to do, if you get to a point like that, pick up your phone and send this to a friend and say, "Hey, check this out, between 10 to 15 minutes. There's something very important I'd love you to see." Also, you're going to find the link to join our 21,000 Smart Friends on email, where you're going to receive an email from me once every week. Plus, down below, you're also going to see links to connect with the guest. So please make sure you tick those 3 boxes and enjoy the rest of this episode.
How are you finding Dubai so far? 1 month into it?
Yeah, 4 weeks yesterday, actually it was. So yeah, no, we're loving it here. Spoke to so many awesome people we wouldn't normally get to speak to back in the UK. Lots of doors have been opened, lots of opportunity here, and the weather and lifestyle side of things is awesome as well.
What would you say was the biggest motivation for you guys making that move, you, Kane, and your business partners?
Yeah, to clarify, it's me and Kane who are business partners, and then Jordan who works for me and Kane, but the 3 of us are very close friends. The biggest reason for us was the business opportunity. So we saw there's a lot more opportunity being out here in the type of business we run. Our business is called Pod Partnerships, and it's all about relationships and partnerships between brands and podcasters. So we noticed very early on, it's a very in-person business. Being somewhere like this, where the networking element is so key, makes a massive difference for us. And it means we can speak to people, like I said, we never normally would. And we've already had some really, really promising conversations. We've worked with a lot of podcasts in the crypto trading, finance space as well. And those guys, there's a lot of them out here and a lot of those brands. So business opportunity was what really pushed us to do it. And actually us interviewing Daniel Priestley on our podcast, and him then saying, "Move to Dubai," was like the nail in the coffin. We were thinking about it, and then his advice, being an entrepreneur that we look up to, was one of the final things that made us take the move.
And you actually moved to Dubai shortly after getting your first home in the UK. Do you think when you were moving, did you feel that you were leaving something behind, or how did you manage that transition, knowing that you just made a move?
Yeah, so I'd only just bought my first house, right? So it was a strange one. Obviously, in hindsight, I wouldn't have bought that house if I was moving out here, but I don't regret it at all. I've got a good friend of mine who is renting it from me, essentially. It's in good hands. It's an asset I own now, which over time will only become more valuable as property does. So I don't regret it at all. It made it a very expensive 6 months, buying a house and moving to Dubai. I think I worked out I spent more than £50,000 over the last 6 months, which is not ideal when you think about it. But it wasn't too much of a strange feeling to me. It was just a case of like, maybe I didn't need to buy a house, but at the end of the day, I don't think this business would have got where it was if I was still living and working out of my parents' house. So no regrets about it.
One of the reasons I wanted to have a conversation around just with you, because I think lots of your experience, I think I had to feed off of your energy, you and Kane, just before kicking off my own podcast. And for the listeners that might not be very new to you, how would you introduce yourself best? Well, let me give them a quick little intro, at least what I wrote down, before you go add anything if I missed something. So I know that you co-hosted the top podcast for podcasters. You guys helped hundreds of creators to monetize their message. And then today you've recently co-founded pod partnerships with your business partner and you guys are connecting brands and podcasts with campaigns that convert. Of course, that's what I read. So how would you best introduce yourself to the rest of our audience, maybe adding to what I've just shared?
Don't need to say anything. No, that's pretty spot on. Yeah, me and my business partner have been in the podcast space for a few years now, probably about 8 combined years. And in that time, we were heading up one of the UK's largest podcast agencies, Progressive Media, now rebranded to Disruptive Media, I believe, which is how we met first, Arrey, right?
Yeah.
You came to one of the events. So we've been running events, teaching people how to start podcasts for the longest time. Me and Kane kind of run all the strategy stuff behind that agency. And then, as well as teaching people, we learn ourselves so much about the commercial element of it. So we've then gone and founded Pod Partnerships, which helps podcasters to earn more money through their partnerships, but also helps brands to run better campaigns, podcast advertising campaigns, as a lot of them don't really know how to. Yet there's so much opportunity, but still so many things that people can get wrong. So that's what this business does, connects brands and podcasters in campaigns, like you said. So I feel like that's a pretty accurate representation, and it's basically just me rewording exactly what you said.
Right. Working with lots of these podcasters, and I'm sure you've probably worked with hundreds of them, and most people would probably start podcasts with the idea that it's going to grow their audience and they can get some income from it. But you realize that in months, they get stuck in about 100, 200 downloads, and then there's no traction. What do you think most people misunderstand about how podcasts actually grow?
When it comes to podcasts, there's 3 ways to leverage podcasting. Either you guest, you start your own, or you advertise on other podcasts. Now, all 3 of them have different benefits, different downsides, different upsides, and are suitable for different people and companies. If you're starting your own podcast, you need to realize it's a long game. You're not going to see very quick results. You're going to have to put money into it before you see money come out. People often be like, oh, I'm going to make some money, then reinvest it to get better production. It doesn't work like that. You need to have good quality production from the start. You need to be putting the effort into marketing it. You need to be getting great guests. And then over time, when you build that trust with your audience, particularly if you have something of your own you can offer, then there will always be opportunities to monetize it through selling your own thing or working with sponsors. So you can absolutely make good money through hosting your own podcast. It just takes a lot longer, and you need to be persistent and be willing to do it for a long time without seeing results. But if you do that, it puts you in the top couple of %, and then that gives you a great chance of success. Now, other ways like guesting is a lot cheaper, a lot less time intensive, but the results are never going to be quite as good. Advertising, you can get really good results really quickly, but it costs. I think that the ceiling is highest in starting your own podcast. Like, the potential is massive if you have your own podcast, but it just takes a lot longer and a lot more effort and time and money to get there.
You just talked about guesting or doing episodes on your own. Which one will you go for?
It's possible to succeed with a solo podcast, a co-hosted podcast, an interview podcast, any of them. I think interview podcasts generally get the most traction, and that's always going to be the case. People want to see the guests, and the guest might promote it. So that's always going to do well. Me and my business partner co-hosted a podcast, which is a really, really good dynamic if you have a good co-host, because if you don't have a good co-host, it's a problem waiting to happen, right? Because someone might give up, you might fall out over the content. There's so many different things that can go wrong. But if you have a good co-hosted content's great. Interview content attracts a lot of eyes. But the good thing about solo content, if you do stuff on your own, is people are coming for you. It builds a lot of trust in yourself. It's harder to market it. You'll probably get less views, but that content is what is going to convert people into buying from you in the future. So all different types of content have their benefit. You can absolutely put all into one. You can do a podcast which only interviews people, but you could also do a podcast which interviews people and does solo content, which is kind of what myself and Kane done with our podcast. We've done a lot of episodes just us two talking. We've done a lot of episodes interviewing cool people as well. A mix of all of it is probably the best way to go.
If we look at the statistics of the podcasters you've probably helped, I would think that at least a fair amount of them didn't go through past, let's say, the first. I was reading a stat says most podcasts don't go past the first 23 episodes. Why do you think that is so, even when some of these podcasters literally have good content?
I think the biggest side of it comes back to people thinking it's something that will get results quickly. It's not. It's something you need to persist with for a long time, and it takes time to see those results. I think that's the biggest reason people give up, and also they don't realize how much effort's involved. It's not a case of just record and upload. There's editing, there's show notes, there's titles, there's promotion, there's getting guests, and then that's not even including monetizing it, right? So there's a lot more effort than people realize, and you need to have either time or money realistically to do it and do it to a good standard. And when people don't see results straight away, they tend to give up.
If someone was to start podcasting realistically, what would you say could be a good first step for them to, at least the first 2 or 3 steps, the things they have to nail so that they're starting off on a better footing?
Good question. I think it's important to understand who you want your listener to be. Broad podcasts where it's for everyone are really, really hard to grow because there's so many popular podcasts in that space, and you're competing against £1 million production teams when you think of Diet Over CEO, right? So why is someone going to listen to you? You need to come up with almost like a unique value proposition and who is your ideal listener, and then create content for them. So for us on the Podcasters Podcast, our ideal listener was someone like yourself who was looking to start a podcast, looking to grow their podcast. It was a very specific ideal listener, which helps when it comes to growing because you have such a specific audience. And it means 100 people who are really specific is a lot more valuable than 100 random people. Figure out who you want your ideal listener to be and make content that is directed at them. Before starting, it's very good to listen to a lot of other podcasts in your space, in your niche, understand what you like, what you don't like, what guests have they had on that you could maybe get on, which formats do you like the sound of, which topics are interesting to you. So do a bit of market research in that sense, find out what the other people are doing in your space. Those are 2 good things. I'd say that just do it is the biggest thing, that people hold off, come up with excuses, can't think of my name, can't think of this, can't think of that. Just get it recorded. And at the end of the day, your first episode is not going to be as good as your 10th. Your 10th isn't going to be as good as your 100th. That's the way it goes. So just get it recorded. And then I'd also record 6 to 8 episodes before you even set a launch date. So you can launch multiple episodes and also have some in the bank in case you can't record the next week.
Right. I think one of the things a lot of people, at least in my experience and also watching other friends, they just overthink it. Oh, I need to get a really good mic. And by the way, I have a confession to make. I'm using the Blue Yeti.
Oh, are you?
don't
Oh,
like
bloody
it.
hell. Well, look, I'm using a DJI mic, so I can't really say much.
So yeah, but some people just overthink the process. They're like, oh my God, I need to get my background really solid. I need to get this specific kind of lights, and they end up just procrastinating because they feel like every other bit has to be really solid. And I think that's one of the things I see from lots of podcasters or people looking to start.
It's easy to get caught up in that. You can get a good mic for 70, 80 pounds. You can use a phone camera. For my phone camera wouldn't connect. I've got a ring light here, but normally I'd connect my phone camera to the ring light. Really, really high quality camera. I haven't got the right mic at the moment, but typically you can get a good mic for like £100 tops. So once you've got that starting equipment, that's going to be good enough to see you through for a very long time. Your phone is your camera. Ring lights are about 20 quid. Mics you can get about £80 if you get a dynamic mic and you get a good one. Like the Samsung Q2U is a good budget-friendly option. Realistically, you can have everything you need for less than 100 quid.
You know, I've just put my script by the side because I wanted to ask a bit more personal questions. If you look at what I'm doing with the podcast, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. Sometimes I think I need to niche down a bit more, but other times I feel like when I get maybe the comments or the people reaching out and going, I'll give you an example. On the podcast, I've spoken to people, business leaders, whether it's in business, entertainment, or politics. For example, I spoke to there's this 26-year-old from Kenya. He's a barber, like he's literally cutting people's hair in Kenya, but he's running for president. So that was such a cool story. I reached out to him, said, yep, let's do an episode. I spoke to, we have a very top Cameroonian music exec. Shakira released a song in 2006, and part of the song was stolen, was taken from a song which some Cameroonians wrote. And so he was the one who led the delegation that sued Shakira against the song in court. And so I had him on. It was also good. I spoke to another top actor who was actually living with an artificial heart. He had been at the top of his game. No one knew where he was. We just had a really deep chat, and he was on the podcast. He revealed that he was living with an artificial heart. So when I think about all of these stories, I've really had people go, Arrey, I listened to this podcast and it really did me well. Like, that was 1 hour well spent. I listened to this, it was 1 hour well spent. But then I have the conflict within myself if I need to narrow down to maybe some specific kind of audience. So if you look at what I'm doing, I wanted to give that context so that I could get some more tailored help. What would you think that I need to improve on, be it from niche perspective, if I'm really looking to scale the podcast?
First of all, the first thing is for the amount of time you've been doing the podcast and the fact you've taken a 5-month break, you're doing very well. You're at 1,000 subscribers already. You've got a few videos with thousands of views. Like, that's very, very good for how long you've been doing it. So congratulations, first up. Second question is I need to ask you a question to figure out the answer to your question, which is, why do you do it? What's the reason for this podcast?
Two reasons. I do it because I literally love the feeling of helping people. And I think about my younger self that did not have access to some of these mentors, some of these people who could motivate and inspire me. And I want to create that content for my younger, like the other people, to have access to these people. And the second reason is a bit more business inclined. I want to use that to get some traction into specifically. So apart from running the podcast, I run a marketing agency, and with the agency, we focus on two things: helping businesses with email marketing and their sales funnels. So that's one part of it. And then because I've come to learn the digital marketing skills, I actually have a digital marketing club. And so that's something that I tie to it.
Okay, cool. So in terms of the business side of it, your ideal target audience is entrepreneurs, right?
Yes.
So I think what you're doing a lot of business content anyway. Is great. That's the area I'd kind of lean into most. But if the main thing to you is the conversations you're having, the people you're speaking to, and the guests are the biggest part of it, which that seems to be the case, then I wouldn't really change much. You're doing great already. You're getting great traction. You're going to speak to more and more business people, and maybe it becomes more business focused, which is fine. But I wouldn't say, oh, you're in a position where you really need to try and niche down, because one, you're getting great numbers for how long you've been doing it, and two, your offer for your business is to entrepreneurs essentially. Now, if you wanted to niche down, I'd say the area you need to go into is email marketing, and exactly, if someone's listening to you, it's the exact sort of client you're after. Maybe one day you do that, or you just do more and more business content, which kind of ties into that, and keep going as you are. I don't think there's any big need for you to niche down and change the angle in what you're doing, because you're clearly doing very well in terms of the traction you're getting. And I think people become aware of your expertise in what you do and your business. You'll hopefully start to see leads come from the podcast as well.
When do you think you ever get to a point where it's time to start approaching businesses and other brands to advertise?
You can do it before you've even launched. You've definitely got enough traction to start those conversations, right? If you have connections at brands where you feel like you've used their products for a long time and you know them and you would endorse it genuinely, have a conversation with them, because those are the sort of brands, they're the easiest sponsor to get in terms of your first sponsor. Is usually someone that you're connected to or you use their products. So if you go through the softwares you use and all of these things, especially email marketing, whichever kind of ones you recommend, that would be a great sponsor for you to approach. It's worth considering. You'll probably never make as much money through sponsorship as you will selling your own thing, but it can be a good way to start monetizing, especially if you speak to these brands, and even if it's a few £100 extra or a few £1,000 extra, whatever it is, there could be an opportunity for you to actually get someone on board and kind of be your first sponsor, your first way of monetizing.
And so if I'm going to them, do you go to them based on, okay, let's go to sponsors based on the stats for YouTube. Let's go based on the stats for Spotify. Let's go based on the stats of what does that tie into? Or do I just wanted to reach out. These are my stats for both YouTube and all of this.
Is your YouTube stats better than your audio?
Yeah. It's better than my audio.
I wouldn't message with stats. It would be a case of reaching out and linking the channel, like, hey, I host this podcast. I've been using your product for years. I particularly love X about your product. I speak to a lot of people in this industry. A lot of my audience are this. I wanted to see if you'd be open to partnering with the podcast, as I'm already such a massive fan of your company. Something along those lines. Start a conversation. You need to send a lot of emails or have a lot of conversations for something to convert. And then it's a case of providing as much value as you can. You mentioned to me you have an email list as well. Incorporate that into a sponsorship. So yeah, that's how I'd approach it for you, and link the YouTube, because the YouTube does look good.
And with the businesses that are of the podcasts that you guys work with, do you ever say to them, here's the minimum for what you should at least charge when you're stepping out for sponsorships? Is there a minimum, or do you just go, I know there's no specific one size fit all, but just a general idea?
There are minimums. It's hard because every industry is different. Now, when you're a smaller show in general, if you were to go for a CPM model, it's not going to be worth anything to you. So realistically, you need to not overcharge, but you want to be doing a fixed fee, which is a bit higher, but then really over delivering within your content. Because if you were to go off a some of the shows we work with, there might be like roughly a £40 CPM, and a £40 CPM for yourself is probably going to get you about 40, 50 quid an episode, which if that, so it's not really worth the time. But if you were to do a fixed campaign of 12 weeks and it might be at £5,000 or £10,000, but within that you can really over deliver and promise all sorts of things, and make it something that's valuable beyond just reaching out to your listeners for the brand, then certain brands would think actually that's great value for money. We've closed lots of sponsorships where it's been 15, 20, 25,000 pounds. They haven't even launched yet. There's definitely opportunity for you to start those conversations. Pricing is such a difficult one. Don't go off a minimum base. Figure it out based on who you're talking to and the value you think you can provide to them. And then, yeah, I'd look at a fixed campaign at a cost where you feel you're happy to get paid that, but you also think you'll deliver well for the brand.
That's very helpful. In terms of when it comes to, let's talk about the marketing side of podcast. There's growing pressure everywhere from TikTok to YouTube to Instagram, and how podcasters should market their podcast. How do you think that podcasters should approach it, especially around repurposing content without losing like the core focus of the podcast itself?
With video content, the blessing is a lot of the marketing is done for you on these platforms. So you can use TikTok, Instagram Shorts, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts to essentially cut up your episodes and go viral on these platforms. It's not always the viral clips that generate listeners, but often if you have an interesting guest and the clip is a really good individual piece of content that gets a lot of people interested, but leaves people thinking, oh, I wonder what that guy's got to say. I want to know more about that. Then that can trickle down into people listening to the podcast. Not a high percentage at all. It'll be like 0.1%, 0.01%, something like that. But if you can get a lot of short form content out there, so people are seeing you everywhere, then when they go, oh, I'm going to listen to a new podcast, let me check out that new podcast that I've been seeing all over TikTok. Because people don't go from scrolling through TikTok to, oh, I'm going to watch a whole length podcast. It doesn't really work like that. But if your brand awareness is everywhere for your podcast, then there's going to be a point in which people go, oh, actually, I am going to check that out next time I want to listen to a new podcast. So the easiest way to not the easiest, but one for you way of marketing is just have really good video production and really good clips.
In terms of the guest, that reaching out, especially running a show like that is based on guests. Sometimes you have to reach out to several people. And to those who might be watching right now, what do you think separates the people who get a yes from a guest and the people who do not get a yes?
Personalization is huge. People feel like you're genuinely asking them. If you can say, look, my audience would be interested in what you have to say. A big thing is if it's a guest who has a book coming out or something happening where they're trying to do a lot of PR, it's a great time to reach out to them. I've seen small guests get huge guests by reaching out to them at the right time. But yeah, make it about them. You're reaching out to these guests like, hey, I love what you've done with X magazine here, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to have you on my show. I think my audience could learn a lot from your insights on X, Y, Z. And they're an audience full of X, which should probably convert to a few customers for you. Something along those lines. Make it personal, make it valuable to them, and make them feel genuinely wanted, I guess. Not just a copy and pasted, hey, would you like to be a guest on my podcast?
Yeah. In terms of, I think you're sharing lots that, to be honest, I have to go back and watch this. We're just a few minutes in, and there are lots of stuff that you've shared. I have to go back and rewatch myself. If I think about all your years in the podcasting game and helping hundreds of podcasters, what would you say is one thing that a lot of people overlook, which they should actually be paying more attention to?
What do podcasters overlook? And as in they don't think it's very important, but it is very important.
Yeah.
I'd say the consistency of upload time and day and just being there, turning up every single week is a huge one. People think, oh, I'll miss a week here, miss a week there, I'll upload at different times. But podcast listeners are creatures of habit. So it's very important that actually you turn up at the right time and people will get to see your content at the same time every week because they will listen at the same time every week. So that's quite an important one. People don't realize the importance of. When it comes to YouTube, both thumbnails and the first 30 seconds are like by far the most important element. The retention is what pushes the videos out as well as the click-through rate. So if you have good thumbnails and a good first 30 seconds of your video, then your retention, your click-through rate is going to be higher. Your YouTube will push you out to more people on the YouTube recommended page. Just
Based
quickly,
on
Arrey, you might have to pause this. I realised as it got dark, this whole room's become like super reflective. Do you want me to close the curtains for the rest of the episode or leave it?
that's up to you, to be honest. I don't. If you want to close, you can close. But I think
I don't want the content to look shit for you. I should have thought about it, but as it's got really dark, it's just basically become a whole like
well, I can
reflection
now
of the room.
now that you've mentioned it, I can see your ring light. But actually, if you
Yeah,
want to leave, you can close it. You can close it, or even one
I
side.
reckon it might look better. You'll have to probably reference it in the edit, but give me a second.
I think for
Okay,
those
I should.
watching, they're already going. They're going to know. They're going to notice because actually the view behind you was so cool.
It was
And
really
then,
cool, but it was
yeah.
also very reflective.
So you were
But
talking about you said the thumbnail and the first 30 seconds of the podcast really matters. What we're doing right now with the podcast, those first 30 seconds, we're actually adding a trailer. Kind of like a Steven Bartlett style. Is that a better way to go, or should we have just gone straight into it and just, hey, just speak to the guest, an intro, and then speak to the guest?
no, that's the way you're doing it is really good. Using a trailer to tee up the rest of the episode, people getting to see clips and like making them want to stay, massive for retention. So great that you're doing that. What I would avoid doing, and I don't know if you do this, but some people do, is have a really long intro where they talk about the guest, or they have a generic copy and pasted intro. That's the start of every episode, or like some graphics that float around for like 5-6 seconds. All of this, which is not content. So there's a couple of ways of doing it, which is either the way you're doing it now, or recording a short intro after the episode to say, hey, just recorded with Ash. He founded a podcast company. He's been in the podcast space for a few years, and he's shared some wisdom on how to launch a podcast, how to grow your YouTube, XYZ. You wait to the end to hear him talk about this, and then get straight into the content. Like, make it really sharp, sell the content, and then go into it. But actually, the best way of doing it is the way you're doing it now. So I think obviously it's working too. Your YouTube is doing well. So having that trailer at the start is great. Just don't ever fall into the trap of having really long intros, because people just want to go straight into the content.
Right. So what we are doing right now, immediately after the trailer, we have like a 1 minute intro, which is honestly generic, and I'd recorded that already. So the intro just simply says, "Hey, thanks for checking this episode. Check the description for helpful links, and then subscribe and then share." That's I would say about 59 seconds to 1 minute. Would you recommend taking that off and instead saying it in the intro that I record? Or
Definitely. I'd say the thing is, YouTube subscribers is become quite irrelevant, because there's the recommended page pushes you out to people anyway. So it's not as important as it used to be to have people subscribed. The other side of it is, as a call to action like that, I'd save it for the end, purely because then if you take that minute out and put it at the end, it will remind people at the end to click subscribe, when they're probably more likely to than at the start anyway. But also it means at the start you get straight into the content. I definitely wouldn't have a minute of like generic content which people would have heard multiple times, because you'll get them skipping, or you get them to just click off. I'd go literally straight into the episode after the intro, after the trailer, straight into it, and then you could have that bit at the end saying, hey, thanks for listening. If you like this, subscribe. There's links down to their profile at the bottom, XYZ, whatever it is you want to put in there.
one of the things, this is a two-part question. One of the things I consider doing based on my schedule and the number of things that I have to do, and still on the fact that I want to be very consistent with the show, is publishing every 2 weeks instead of every week. What do you think about that? Then on the second side of it, I'd also thought about keeping a specific day to publish, let's say Monday, I don't know, Monday 5 p.m. or so. Sometimes I've honestly failed on that. I literally said that to my email list. I was like, hey, an episode every Monday, and then Monday reaches, I'm busy, I'm doing one thing or the other.
I
And
told you that's the most important bit. You can schedule it on YouTube, no?
Mm-hmm.
I would always schedule it at the same time. If you can't do weekly, then do it every other week. Weekly is a lot better. However, it's better to be consistent every other week than it is to try and do weekly and then have to take a 5-month break or something like that because you haven't got enough guests. So better off to be consistent in every other week. Make sure the audio you should upload at like 1 a.m. because there's no algorithm. Just get it out there like first thing in the morning, so it's there for when people wake up. The YouTube, 5 p.m. It's worth testing different times, but if you're doing it at 5 p.m., make sure it's at 5 p.m. every time.
If you had to be rebuilt from scratch, I know you guys have closed the pod. By the way, is the Podcasters podcast? Are there any chances of any an online version not recorded at Progressive, or what's the future like? Is that
What
close
for
to
that podcast specifically?
Yeah.
That podcast, yes, because a few years, obviously, we've moved out here to Dubai now. We don't have access to the studio, but also we've done 270 episodes of a podcast about podcasting. At the end of the day, I think we've probably covered everything at least 6 times. So it was like, for what that podcast was, we covered everything. We could still do interviews, but us having a new startup out here and our focus, like, we didn't want to half-arse it. So it was like, look, we'll stop doing that. Yes, we probably will do another podcast at some point. Both me and Kane were talking the other day about how we miss it. And we'll probably bring something back. It might be a little bit broader than just podcasting, where it will be. We don't want to just do another version of the same podcast. But we've got some great connections out here. We might do something focused on business out here in Dubai, or the creator business, like something along those lines. So there's definitely opportunity for another podcast in the future. Will it be the Podcasters podcast? No, probably not. But that will always still be there, and most of the content is evergreen, so people can just go back and watch it as much as they want.
If I was somebody, I'd just go back and just binge watch everything right now, because
has that been valuable for you in your start?
Yeah, it's just going to have everything we need. In terms of what you guys are trying to do right now with pod partnerships,
with pod partnerships.
Who can benefit from that?
So who can benefit in terms of the business? Like, who does the business help? So 2 angles, both podcasters who have a very large engaged audience, but either don't really understand the commercial side of it too well, so are probably getting underpaid, or just don't have the time to do the commercial side of it themselves. And then also brands who are out there wanting to get into the podcast space, but maybe not really knowing the best way to approach podcast advertising, or just kind of wanting some support in terms of how to get the best out of their podcast ad.
If you had to rebuild from scratch, what are some of the things you would consider? No audience, no brand, just a mic. How would you launch a podcast today?
Well, that's a very good question. I think I would leverage the video channels where you don't need an audience and you can still get a lot of traction. So TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, I've started to get quite good at. So I'd probably try building a bit of a kind of something on LinkedIn in the lead up to launching the podcast. If I had great connections, I'd use them to try and get them as guests, but also agree to promote the podcast and call in any favors I have with people. Maybe go to any industry events of whichever area my podcast is going to launch in, and just do a lot of in-person, a lot of kind of scrappy marketing, like telling as many people about it as possible. If the question is how would I start a podcast, and that's it. Now, if I was starting a brand new business from scratch, but I had everything I have now, then I would be doubling down on LinkedIn content, podcast content, podcast guesting, TikTok, all of this. And also, if I was starting my own podcast again from scratch, I'd be doing a lot of podcast guesting too.
Right. Sounds awesome. The last question before I might ask you if there are any other things, any upcoming projects. But one of the last questions we always ask every guest on the podcast is, when all is said and done, how do you want to be remembered as Ashley?
Oh, very good question. I kind of want to be remembered as the person who just did it. Like, took every risk, done things people would look up and, why would you do that? Like, I want people to look at me and be like, he's got no fear. Like, he just done it. And my biggest goal has always been, like, not necessarily specifics. Like, I want to own a massive house, I want to do this, that, but it's freedom, both financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom, and just to be happy. And so I could never imagine doing something I don't enjoy just for what it pays me. So I think if people look at me and go, he was always just having a great time, that's how I want to be remembered. I'm not a massive sentimental person in terms of like, I want to have this massive impact on the world. I know a lot of people are, and I respect it massively. It's not something that I've ever had that like urge to have an impact on other people. But I'd love people to look at me and be like, he was always having a good time. That's kind of how I want people to look at me. Is like everything he done was just with the intention of having the best time possible, because you only get one life, right? So you got to make the most of it. I can't see the point in getting to 40 and being like, I spent 15 miserable years building something, but now I'm rich at 40. That doesn't appeal to me. So it's like, if I'm going to build something, I'm going to build it with the people I'm closest to, which I'm doing, and build something I love doing, and enjoy myself while I'm doing it. And if it fails, so be it. I've had a good time.
What do you think drives you at this moment? You talk from a lot of passion. What do you think is driving you? And even to be honest, I'm gonna be honest. When I saw you make the move to Dubai, I was just like, damn, like that's such a huge decision because I
Exactly.
know what it meant to me. So I originally come from Cameroon. I know what it meant to me. I've been to the UK a couple of times before I decided to come and settle. And I know what it meant to me to make that move. I know what it meant to me to leave those connects behind, get here, try to start afresh. It's a lot. What do you think drives you? What do you think? Where do you get that motivation and just you to put energy into the things you're doing and making some of these major decisions?
I think I'm driven by fear of regret. I would much rather try something and it not work than never try it and never know. So I'm very, when I try, and I've said to a few people before, like I have this kind of way of approaching things of every time I get scared, like that's my kind of way of looking at it. Things that would make most people scared, like the financial burden of buying a house, then moving to Dubai a few months later, like and taking all these risks, like would terrify most people. I was like, I'm buzzing for it. I'm excited. Worst case scenario, end up back where I was a few months ago, back in the UK. I have a house there now, so it's the worst case scenario is never that bad. But people always get caught up in like what could go wrong. So there's inevitably going to be times I get burned in my life with that approach, but I'm terrified of regret. So I don't want to sit there and think, fuck, I wish I took that opportunity. That feeling is horrible to me. Everything I do is with the intention of having the best time possible. So like I said about how I want to be remembered, I'm driven by the idea of like doing cool stuff, having a great time, and just not missing any opportunity and taking every chance I get. Because I say I'm 25, I'm not even 25, I'm 24. You're only 24 once, like make the most of it. You don't get the opportunity to move to Dubai every day. Why not?
Someone put up a post and said, I've met a lot of people who inspire me. Stormzy, they mentioned Stormzy, they mentioned, I think, one other artist, but they said when they met you, I was just reading that, and he said when he met you and met Kane, and he just had some different level of inspiration. I think that was profound to say. I think it comes from somewhere. Where do you feed most? Where do you feed off? Where do you get most of your energy from, or consume content, or how do you feed off that?
Do you know? I think it's the people around me, right? I think if you're surrounded by the right people with a similar mindset who are doing similar stuff, like I think that I've made a very conscious effort to surround myself with people I want to be around and people who I look up to in certain aspects or have similar goals to me, or just similar mindsets. And I really struggle to spend time around people that I don't have that kind of relatability to now. More so than I ever used to. Like if I spend negative people drive me up the wall. I can be the biggest moaner in the world, but someone who's always blaming other things and the world's against them, like do my head in. I really struggle to be around people like that, but I love being around people who come up with like really cool creative ideas all the time, or who are really successful, or who have massive goals and love risk and and just say yes to everything. People who don't hold back and just go. They're my kind of people, and I think being surrounded by those kind of people, it just kind of breeds, and it comes out like that. And it was Kyle who made that post, who we've become quite close to being out here. And I was surprised he made that post, but we've spent a good amount of time with him already out here, and he's awesome. He's killing it in his own space. And I'm glad that he saw us in that way. And I've had a lot of compliments about that, and like how brave it is, how crazy it is with that we're doing what we're doing, the way we approach it. But I think it feels a lot easier when you're surrounded by two people, myself having Kane and Jordan around me, who have the exact same mindset and the same, like, let's just do this, that kind of attitude.
Yeah, and I must say, you guys are very good writers for some reason. I don't know how, but Jordan writes very well.
Jordan writes what on his LinkedIn posts?
Yeah, he writes very well. You write very well. And then Kane just has his way of just throwing out things there, and the way you guys tease each other in the comments. I'm always just laughing. Sometimes if I see your post, I just go, okay, What is Kane saying about this?
He loves it. He hates doing content, like written content, but he loves giving me abuse in the comments of my own content, and it always gets loads of likes. And he's been complimented on it a few times, so I don't know. It's continuing the vibe of the podcaster's podcast, I guess.
Mhm.
But yeah, we are. I don't know why. I've just LinkedIn content is something I've kind of started to really understand and started to figure out like what works, what doesn't. Anytime I talk about moving to Dubai, it does really well. And that's where I've had meetings with founders, CEOs of like multi-billion-dollar companies, which I would never get the chance to do in the UK. But through LinkedIn, they've reached out to me, which has been amazing. So yeah, I'm getting okay at the whole LinkedIn stuff. Kane just sits there and trolls me, and Jordan's getting very good at it as well. So the three of us are going to be a LinkedIn power team, I think.
Yeah, I think it's so lovely to watch. I have a friend, so my apartment is upstairs and my friend lives downstairs. We live in the same building. Before even having our own different apartments, we kind of started living together in the same room. But that's how our relationship is. We're just always bantering and just hating each other. If you look at us for the first time, it's kind of like, who are these guys? But yeah, so when I
Yeah.
see Kane do that or Jordan, I just go, oh yeah, this guy, it's a good energy and it's an extension of that. Anyway.
You need it on LinkedIn as well because it's such a corporate, boring place. So I think having that kind of bit of fun about it just makes it more interesting and it
Yeah.
lands well with people. And like you said, multiple people now kind of expect to see Kane's comment, which is like, oh, great.
Yeah.
People are coming to my posts for the abuse.
What's next for Ashley?
Build an empire out here in Dubai, I guess. The biggest focus right now is just building partnerships to be as great of a business as possible and building our black book of like people we know, connections, network, contacts, all of this. If I look in a year's time, I want my time to be spent in the business on the best possible tasks, like money generating tasks, but also managing relationships between huge brands and podcasts. And then just having a network of amazing people, which we're already starting to build out here. The lifestyle side of things out here is awesome. It's easy to get caught up in it. It's very expensive, but just the feeling of going to a coffee shop and sat in the sun, looking over a marina is like, you don't get that back home. So just those sort of things I want to continue. And I just want the business to go step after step after step and just keep growing.
Well, man, I wish you all the best in chasing that. And I think that at some point our paths are still going to cross as we're building and growing and just crushing all the things that we're doing at our different ends. I know that you will make it. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of having the first few months of putting your feet down. And I'm just so looking forward to that. And do you know, I have to say this, do you know when sometimes you meet somebody just running their journey and you guys do not necessarily interact? I think I would say maybe it's kind of the same feeling you had with Daniel Priestley. You watch him from afar, he's running his journey, but that serves as an inspiration to you without you guys even connecting. And then when you have the chance to connect, you can feel that now the impact is even closer. I think it's the same way, me just watching you guys. And even in the podcasting space, I did feed off a lot from that energy. And I want to appreciate you guys for that. So I really do appreciate it.
I really appreciate that, Arrey. Thank you. I'm glad to have had a positive impact, and you're killing it. So we must be doing something right with the advice we give, right?
That's it.
If you just enjoyed this episode, the chances are that you're going to enjoy other amazing episodes that we've recorded, so you can check that out somewhere around this video. Before you go, please make sure you check our 3 boxes. First things first, please make sure to hit the subscribe or the follow button down below, because the more we grow, the bigger guests we can approach on this platform and the more value we can bring to you here on the podcast. Second, a lot of friends always reach out to me and say something like, hey Arrey, I really did enjoy this particular segment of this episode. Pick up your phone and send this to a friend and say, hey, check this out between 10 to 15 minutes. There's something very important I'd love you to see. Number 3, please make sure to check out the links in the description for very helpful resources. So before you go, please make sure to tick those 3 boxes. Like I always say, my friends, cheers to many more years of shamelessly living and crazily excelling in passion and purpose. And I'll speak to you in the next episode.